Welcome to today's webcast. KPMG has been approved by NASBA to deliver CPE-worthy training. In order to receive CPE credit, you must attend for the entire session and participate in interactivity checks. Interactivity checks will appear on top of your media player and may or may not be verbally addressed by presenters. Participation is tracked, and failure to participate will result in denial of CPE credits. If you have any technical issues during the webcast, please submit a question through the Questions and Answers panel, and our producers will respond to you directly. Please submit all content-related questions through the Questions and Answers panel.
Well, good morning and good afternoon to all. Thank you for joining our industrial manufacturing industry session. My name is Brad Hirsch, and I'm a valuation partner here at KPMG, and I lead our industrial manufacturing and aerospace and defense sectors for our U.S. valuation practice. I want to thank you all for joining the conference. We hope you enjoyed it, whether in person or virtual. This is the last session of the conference, and we promise to make it very exciting. We're a couple minutes late because our main presenter today was busy signing autographs at the last session he just left, so bear with us. But before we get going, let me introduce you to Mary Beth Shamrock, who is my counterpart on the accounting side. She will get you introduced to our famed presenter today, and we will also be monitoring the question and answers section. So please submit any questions you have, and we'll work with our presenter to get those answered at the end of the session. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to a great session here. Mary Beth?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you. Like Brad said, I am lead for Accounting Advisory Services, and I think today's presentation everyone is going to find very interesting. I'm joined by my fellow partner, Gary Silberg. I think you're going to see a lot of what Gary talks about when it comes to data and how it's being used within the automotive industry. You'll see the tie back to our keynote speaker, Shane. Although Gary's going to talk about data a little bit differently, we're not going to talk about how you use data to guard Kobe Bryant, but hopefully you'll find it just as interesting as our sessions in Miami. So thank you everyone for joining. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow partner and friend, Gary Silberg.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Mary Beth. It's a pleasure to be with you. Sorry, I'm unable to be on camera, but that's better for you, I'm sure. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the exciting automotive industry. And as we will show you, and I will show you on this talk, the industry is at an inflection point. It's one of the most exciting times, I think, in the last 100 years for automotive. It's such a transformational change going on. Over $500 trillion of capital has been committed. This is not a theoretical discussion we're having. This is actual committed capital. Billions and billions of dollars. Every day you open up the front page of the Wall Street Journal, you hear about a new battery plant being going up, or a new joint venture. There are 160 new electric vehicles coming online. There's ICE vehicles. And I'll walk you through this autonomous vehicles. This is massive and it's exciting. But what I'm going to also argue is that this is going to create tremendous amount of opportunity, and I'll say turmoil. And there are, as we would say at KPMG, there are many paths to this nirvana, but some could end with beautiful rainbows and butterflies, and that's going to be fantastic. But quite frankly, others could end in abject failure. And it's shaking out. You're already seeing a little bit of it now, but you wait and see. We're going to have tale of two stories here. So with that, why don't we get going? Mary Beth, the first slide up there is the, I'm not sure I can see it all, just so I'm clear on which one's up. Is it the one on the white papers, or, oh, there we are. There we go. So if you could just power forward on that. So actually go back to the, I think you could, yeah, the one before, so we've written a lot of white papers here. Well, I'm going to focus in on our research from 10 years ago, or actually 11 years ago, on self-driving cars, the clock speed dilemma. We wrote papers on deep learning and AI. I mean, these are just phenomenal type of topics. But the 4 areas I'm going to cover with you are the big ones that are changing the industry. And the first is the outlook, but is AVs, autonomous vehicles, which it will be the last thing I'll touch on, has probably been one of the most exciting, hyped, down and now up again area that you're going to hear about. And this idea of the digital consumer, I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm going to talk to you about this massive EV change and then how and where people drive. And within these white papers, you'll see, and you can look at them later, just really robust data to support this $500 trillion or $500 billion investment. So let me just, no, I won't bore you with all the white papers. Let me go straight into the presentation now. If you could advance it a couple. We're going to be talking on electric vehicles first. So before I go, all of you aren't in person, but my question to you in the audience, if you're paying attention, how many vehicles did we sell in the United States from, let's say, 2019? Just, I won't give you the answer. I'm going to go forward with this in a second. And how many did we sell in 2018, 17, and 16? I want you to think about it for a second. The answer, which we will go forward right now, let's go forward, is 17 million, 17.2, 17.1, 17. Literally, for the last 4 years pre-COVID, we had this fantastic run of automotive sales, okay? Now, look what's happened afterwards. We had this horrible thing called the pandemic. You saw a massive decline in automotive sales. Look at the decline. And for those of you who know automotive, people kill for, die for, shoot for, a tenth of market share. And look at how much it plummeted. Then, and we'll talk about the reasons why that occurred. Then what's happened after that, we had a little comeback in 2021. And if you were to ask me what would 2022 look like this year, and we are now December 15th, I would have told you at the beginning of the year, no doubt that number is going up because the auto industry is going to figure out the supply chain and we're going to get back to normal or closer to normal. And to the contrary, we had wars, we had exogenous events in China, and we've had supply chain, COVID, and the industry actually went down, okay? It's pretty stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And some companies are going to be better in 2023. Others are still going to be really, really struggling in the near term. But more importantly, look at when do we get back to normal. Normal being the 17 million. Most forecasts have that out to 2026 and beyond, or 2027. So we are at an interesting point, as you will see later, because there are massive, $500 billion of investments of new vehicles coming online. And the question is, who the hell is going to buy all these cars? All right, next question before I go to the next one. All right. How many cars, this is called the car park, how many cars are there in the United States today? We love cars in America. We just love our cars. Why don't you have a think about it? And maybe how many in your household has a car? By the way, the U.S. has almost 2.2 cars per household, a little bit higher, actually. It's pretty stunning. It is by far the highest in the entire world. And if China ever even got half as much as we would, they would probably sell 50 million cars a year. All right, let's advance it. I'm going to give you your quiz, and it is around 290 million vehicles. Think about that. And look what happened to those numbers. They actually went up while new car sales went down. Pardon me, 1 second. New car sales went down for the last 3 years, or essentially flat, well below the 17 million threshold. And yet the car park grows. Why did it grow? Why did it grow? Well, many of you out there know why it grew. It's because you couldn't get cars and people were holding on to their cars. And this is a very important data point. I'll ask you another question. Of the 300 million, how many of those do you think are EVs? I think you all know it's probably, pardon me, excuse me, 1 second. It's essentially none of them, okay? None of them. I mean, nits to have this. And going forward, I'll show you this in a second. So what's happened in the U.S. market is now in disequilibrium. So let's go to the next slide. If a slide's worth 1,000 words. So what has happened? What we studied with the data that Mary Beth was talking about, we looked at used cars and new car prices over the last 32 years. The blue and the light and the dark blue, look at how they're highly correlated. If the picture's worth 1,000 words, new and used car prices stayed essentially the same. I would say the R squared was close to 0.7-ish. You've had a little bit higher in used cars versus new car price index during recessions and during 9/11, but essentially they followed. Then what happened? In March of 2021, in April of 2021, it shot off like a rocket. Look at the numbers. I mean, it's stunning. And you can see what happened to new car sales. Why did this happen? And why are we still in disequilibrium? Next slide. And we're going to come back to this slide in a second. So for those of you who have followed the automotive industry, I'm going to take you back to the bad old days in COVID, okay? If you look at the industry in March of 2020, what was the, pardon me, one more second, I really apologize. I had something go down the wrong throat. If you go back to March of 2020, we were told there was our leadership told us 2 weeks to stop the spread, I think was the words they told us, and that didn't quite turn out as planned, as we all know afterwards. But the auto industry shut down, and I mean globally shut down. There was no production. Every plant, every single supplier, and globally shut down. We've never seen anything like it. So you can see on the bottom what's happening with new production, and the light blue is what's going on with sales, okay? So the sales versus production, what's happening. At this time, the industry had close to 88 to 90 days of inventory. So you could go out on the lot and get a car. And you'll remember back in the day in 2020, you could just go to a dealership and buy a car. And that was the case back then. Now what's happened subsequently? All the auto industry shut down, and our economy was shut down, but there were workers called essential workers had to go to work, and they needed transportation. So after they started to go back to work, they started ordering vehicles, okay, and buying vehicles. But there was plenty of vehicles to buy, right? There was 90 days. But what happened to the industry and the seeds of its demise, I should say demise is a little bit strong, but the seeds of its pain were planted right about this time. Everybody, almost everybody in the industry, told their suppliers to stop production. We will tell you what our volumes are going to be, okay? And the industry, as you may know, they are very powerful. And if you know your five forces, they have massive buyer power. And as I like to say, they're the king, or as my wife likes to say, the queen sits on the top, called the OEM, the automaker, and the suppliers are expected to bow down to them in many ways. I'm being a little tough on the auto industry, but this is how they have treated historically their suppliers. And this is what they did. But there were other suppliers that they treated this way, and they were the new suppliers. You might have heard of them, called Qualcomm and NXP Semiconductor and NVIDIA, etc., and ON Semiconductor, and on and on and on. And so the semiconductor manufacturers, who are absolutely critical to the industry, were told to stand down and bow, basically. And the semiconductor suppliers said, well, are you sure? Are you really, really sure? And they were told to stand down. Well, if you'll recall, what happened after that is all of us sat at home for most part, and we were ordering new tablets, we were getting new phones, we were getting PCs, we were getting all these electronic devices, and semiconductor sales soared, okay? And that's where the seeds were planted. So we go on in this little story, and this is a very important story of disequilibrium, where all of a sudden in I'll call it the September-October timeframe, people are going to the dealership. In between here, we passed what was called I forget the act, but basically the about $2 trillion of subsidies were given when we shut down the industry. It was a bipartisan bill, which actually was quite good. And I think everybody would agree with that. So the economy is coming back. We had a thing called an election, if you'll recall. It's hard to believe that 2020 is over 2 years ago. And we were just hearing the auto industry talk about semiconductor issues. I'm missing semiconductors. I don't have semiconductors. And all of a sudden you see the delta between production and sales happening. And this took off, and this took off, and this took off. And all of a sudden there are no cars, okay? What happened from the economy perspective? This was under the Trump administration. They handed out another $1 trillion. I want you to remember this. $1 trillion of checks went out in December of 2020 under the old administration. So we gave $2 trillion and then another $1 trillion, and there are no cars and there's no supply, okay? And then the new administration takes over, and the first thing that they did in March and April of 2020 is they passed the the CARES Act, where we spent close to $2.3 trillion of more checks went out to everybody, okay? So we, juiced the economy, and there were no cars. So I want you to go back one slide, please. Go back if you would. So this is when the gas came on the fire. I mean, when you threw the gas on the fire, this is when it soared. The economy, everybody was vaccinated, people were going back to work, the economy was on steroids, and there was no supply. And used car prices were the only available option, and they soared. They soared completely out of disequilibrium, and we are now in a position where this is coming back down to earth. So I want you to advance a couple more slides forward, please. So today, what we have is we have a situation where used car prices, and this is one of the papers you can look at, used car prices are now down. If you saw the CPI, we followed every month. The CPI was up 7.1%. Everybody's excited. It's still pretty high inflation. We've never seen it. It's just not as high as it was. But for the last 6 straight months, the CPI index is up 8, 9, 7, 10, whatever, these very large numbers. There's one line item on the CPI that's actually down and negative, and that is used car prices. Used car prices are down close to 15% year on year. 15%. We think they have a long way to go. So if you have a used car right now and you were having good times, you may have overpaid and significantly, or if you want to wait and buy that. And what's happening with new car prices. This is a massive issue for the economy because people are underwater. There was trillions of dollars of loans on these cars, and we are in disequilibrium. We're about to get to hopefully equilibrium sometime next year, and the implications are profound. We've never seen anything like this in the last 35 years. And I think the Federal Reserve, I'm not going to be critical of the Federal Reserve, but clearly this takeoff in used car prices was well known, well seen. We were screaming about it in the auto industry, and people thought it was transitory when clearly it wasn't. And obviously it's easy to look back now, but if you look at the graphic and what happened, you would have known that this, certainly in our industry, that was not going to be the case. Next slide. So now what's happening is we're in disequilibrium, okay? We have a used and new car price differential we've not seen, although it's coming closer to equilibrium. The onslaught of new EVs are coming into play, okay? So I want to stir the pot a little for you to realize what's going to happen. There are 160 million or 160 new sexy, beautiful EVs, which I'm going to show you pictures here in a moment, coming online, okay? They're going to be coming online, and we'll see how many, pardon me here, just did something here, 1 second. So they'll be coming online, and the issue will be how many will be available, okay? In addition to the supply chain issue that we have. So let me talk about this for a second. On the right, if you add up the light blue, those are the EV sales between now and the next till the end of the year or to the end of the decade. If you were to add up all the direct EV sales, those add up to around 30 million. So the EV market is going to explode. It's very exciting, but it's only going to be 30 million. Now, if you go back to my one of my earlier questions, how many cars are there in America? There's around 290 million. So by 2030, let's say there's 300 million cars, okay? What does that mean? If we sold 30 million between now and the decade, which would be fantastic for EVs, that would mean only 10% of the car park is going to be EVs, okay? And these are aggressive numbers anyhow. So when people tell you we're going to be living by the end of the decade in this beautiful EV future, that's false. That's factually not going to happen. And in fact, it's not even going to close to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to live with what we call a mosaic of powertrains. There's going to be sexy, beautiful, exciting EVs, which you will see, and it's going to be amazing. But there's going to be a massive amounts of internal combustion engine. Nobody who paid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for an ICE vehicle is going to be giving it up anytime soon until they take it out. So this is the world we'll be living with. Next slide, please. So what others are trying to figure out is, well, what will happen if the automakers added, let me say it a different way. We at KPMG, we looked at all the data on what the company said in terms of their EV sales. And this is quite astonishing. This won't surprise a finance crowd, I guess. But if you were to add up all the EV sales that they project, the industry is going to be selling close to 70+ million in EVs a year by 2030. Just to put that in perspective, this is global, by the way. The global sales are around 80 to 90 million. Maybe we could get to 100 million by 2030. I doubt it. So this is projecting like globally, it's almost 70 to 80% of every car will be sold will be EVs. And I just showed you there's no way that's going to happen. And if you would take the global average of two of the forecasters, it's around 35 to 40. So EVs are going to be great. But what you can see is all these companies who invested $500 billion, some of them are going to win and some are going to lose, but there is no way that we're going to hit these numbers. So this is the situation we're in. So next slide, and I think I'll elaborate this a little bit more. If you look at where they're positioning the vehicles, so this is a great histogram. I think you'll enjoy this. What we did in this paper called Place Your $1 Billion Bets Wisely is we took all the sexy, beautiful EVs and we show them where they're positioned vis-a-vis the market on pricing, okay? Where are they on pricing? And pre-COVID, and the heuristic is basically the same, 2019, 2018. Basically about 17% of the market, we sold vehicles above $50,000 pre-COVID, okay? Or in other words, 83% of the market was under $50,000. So the vast majority of all car sales are below $50,000, okay? Look at where all the new sexy EVs are positioned. Look at them. They're all positioned above $50,000 essentially, okay? This was pre-COVID. This is when we announced the paper. Next slide. Subsequent to that, look at the pricing. We have had massive amounts of inflation, input prices, and so you can look at the year-on-year increase that has occurred just a quarter later. They're positioned even higher. Next slide. Then we took the most recent one, not the most recent, I'm going to get to this in a second, and they've shot up again. So essentially, the entire end use of vehicles is going after this sexy, beautiful, these cars are going after wealthy people. And after the Inflation Reduction Act, one of my favorite oxymorons, what happened? We don't even have this on here. But after the Inflation Reduction Act was announced and passed, guess what automakers did? They raised prices again, okay? So here we are in an industry that is completely in disequilibrium. We have 160 new, fantastic new EVs coming to market. We have all the ICE vehicles, and these vehicles are all positioned essentially in the highest end of the market. We have high interest rates, The cost of ownership is very high right now. The industry has committed $500 billion, committed $500 billion of committed capital. And we're about to see how all this plays out. Now, in the interim, next slide, you'll laugh out loud. So some of these sexy, beautiful vehicles, which I don't have the pictures here. I apologize. You'll look online. We'll send them out later. But this disequilibrium, let me ask you, I would have asked you a question. Does anybody know how much a new Hummer EV costs? It's astonishing. A Hummer EV is over $100,000, okay? They're in such high demand. This is a true story at an auto dealer where they actually upped the price because of market, I forget what the words they called it here, market availability, raised the price $50,000 to get a Hummer EV, okay? It's just happening all over the industry. They can't get the EVs in line, and people are paying very high premium prices for these vehicles. So let me pause for a second and give you the punchline one more time. The industry is in disequilibrium between new and used car prices. Used car prices are coming down significantly. New car prices have risen, but they're starting to plateau. Interest rates are very high and growing. The cost of ownership, we've never seen it this high in probably at least 10 years to 12 years for interest rates because of the high inflation. And at the same time, not in the last 100 years have we seen this innovation transformation where we're actually moving to these exciting new electric vehicles. It's all happening now. And people have committed $500 billion of capital to make all this happen. So hopefully you understand why we're very optimistic. We're very excited about the industry. And there's going to be rainbows and butterflies and fantastic opportunities for many companies. And they'll succeed. But trust me, not all of them are going to make it. There's going to be a shakeout. There are not enough rich people on planet Earth to buy all these cars that people have committed capital to, and you will see a shakeout in this industry. So that's area number one. If you have questions in this area, we can hit them up later. I don't know, Mary Beth or Brad, if I can take any questions now on this. If not, I'm going to go in the second area of data that I think is critical. Okay, I'll keep going. So the second area I want to share with you, and don't advance the slide yet. So this one is quite scary, and everything I'm about to show you is anonymized, so you have nothing to worry about, although we do know a lot about this data. So the question we posed at KPMG is like, we have all these sexy, beautiful vehicles. We have ICE vehicles. We have new EV vehicles. Well, where do they all go? What do people do in their cars? How far do they drive? How long do they stay in their car? What's the mission? Do they do it to go to work? Do they go to shopping, et cetera? So we tried to answer this question, and it's a pretty profound question to ask. And the way we did it is through data and analytics. We purchased data. So on your cell phone, again, this is all anonymized. It says, we don't know who the people are, so I just want to preface this, and it's a bit scary. Advance the slide. So we went to the city of Chicago first, and I'm going to show you what we learned, okay? Chicago has we took at 6 a.m. in the morning, from 9 a.m., we grabbed the data of where people travel. Now, how did we do this? Your phone, if you opted in on any of the apps, that data is sold to somebody who puts it in available analytics, which KPMG took, and this took us a long time and a lot of R&D and research from our data and analytics team who are phenomenal. We have on this page close to 400,000 lines of people from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and we followed the phone where it went at 6 a.m., and if it didn't go anywhere, we assumed somebody was sleeping, and we followed the phone where it went, okay? And we assumed this was rush hour and where they went. Let me tell you the results. It's stunning and why this is important. So in the orange area, I live in Chicago, and I was surprised by all of this, by the way, or at least part of it really stunned me, actually. And I've lived in Chicago 25 years. I live in the city. And you can see there's a very short commute. That's the orange on orange. That's where people traveled at 6 a.m. to go to their offices or wherever they go. There were people that went from the city out to the suburbs, and you have people from the suburbs come into the city. We could track this, by the way, just so you know. We could track it if they were on the train because we could see the train. We were able to superimpose this on a map, as you can see. But what stunned us at KPMG, and me in particular, was look at how many people live in the suburbs and stay in the suburbs. Massive amounts, by far the highest amount of rides or missions that were there. Why the hell is all this important? Well, let's say you're an automaker and you're trying to figure out where to put your charging stations, okay, right? Or if you're a mobility service provider and you're Uber or you're Lyft, where do people take rides? How often do they stay in these cars, right? And or if you're an automaker or you're trying to figure out what type of vehicle might be good for these people. Where do they go? This is why this is powerful. It was stunning to get this. So we were so excited about it. We said, let's try another city. So we went into the next city, which was Atlanta. Now, Atlanta looks completely different than Chicago. For those of you who have been to Atlanta, you're not surprised. And I'll give you the aha here in a second. So Atlanta was more, I'm a wannabe physicist. We put little stars and binary. But anyhow, there are people who live in the city and stay in the city, but look at the distances. It was more like a star where they would go to different parts of the city. Massive amounts of long commutes, okay? And if you're going to put charging stations in the Atlanta region, you have to look a hell of a lot different than you would in the Chicago region, as you can tell, because they have different missions and different times. Now, the next one I'm going to show you makes me laugh out loud. I've shown this to I don't know how many times. It's the mother lode of all missions, and let's advance it. It's Southern California. Over, I think, 20 million people. I forget how many people live in the Southern California area. So we have San Diego and Los Angeles in that area. We had so many people. Look at San Diego and Los Angeles. We have so many people going back and forth. They're not riding their cars on the ocean. We just ran out of places on the map to show it. Look at how many people would commute from San Diego to Los Angeles and vice versa in a car. It stunned us. This is during rush hour, okay? This is during the rush hour commute. And then the distances and where they stood. I mean, and by the way, everything I'm showing you right now is pre-COVID, okay? This is what's happened pre-COVID. And it's unbelievable. So a couple punchlines, if you could extend the slides real quickly. One more slide. The punchline, which we learned at KPMG, and hopefully this is enlightening to you, is cities are all different. How people behave and drive within cities. If we were to do New York City, I guarantee you it would look a little more like Chicago or perhaps not even close to any of that. This is an unbelievable difference of understanding how and where people drive, okay? That was our first aha. The second aha I want to share with you is since COVID, how many people, this is a pretty stunning number, moved since COVID, actually changed zip code since COVID and moved out of their state. 43 million Americans have moved since COVID, one way or another. A stunning number, okay, 43 million Americans. So if you're an automaker, if you are trying to put in infrastructure, if you are trying to be a mobility as a service provider, if you're trying to do autonomous vehicles or autonomous trucks, you need to know where the hell all these people live and what they're doing in these vehicles. And it is completely different now than it was before. I'm not going to bore you. We have all this data. We even have it better. We've refined it even more. It's kind of scary. Like I said, we can go learn a lot about this data, where people live, and we know where the phone sleeps. We know what GDP per capita is by all these zip codes. I mean, it is amazing the amount of data that you can learn and see. Some of the applications, if you go to the next slide, for this data is quite amazing. We had a client, I'm not making this up, was a restaurant, and they wanted to change their menu, and they were off the interstate, and they were changing their menu, and they wanted to see if the price elasticity mattered, or if they change it, would they get more customers, the day of the week. We can see literally who goes into your store. In Starbucks, go to your store. How many people are there? When do they come? What type of day? If you want to set up charging stations at Starbucks or wherever, we can track all this. It's pretty damn amazing, the different applications outside of the auto industry that people, once they got the data, are like, And I'm sure many of you on this call and your companies were like, oh, where else could we use this data? So punchline, if you advance the slide, going forward, the analytics that we are able to do about where people drive, why people drive, what's their mission, how long do they stay in the vehicle, is very, very important for the future of the automotive industry, especially as we go through this EV revolution and this revolution of this mosaic of having all these ICE cars still on the roads with all these EV cars and perhaps even autonomous vehicle cars, and figuring out where that is. And the secret sauce is data and obviously the pretty cool, we think cool, analytics that come with that. So that's area 2. Where and how people drive matters, and that is changing, especially given 43 million people have moved, and it's even more important. Okay, I'm going to go to area 3 now. And this is about the revolution in the digital space of the industry, okay? All of you consumers, I'll ask the question, I know the answer, if all you people on the line, how many of you, raise your hand if you could, if I said, went to buy a car, you went to your dealer, and you were just the happiest person in the world. It was the greatest experience, and it was so much fun buying a car at a dealer, right? None of you, well, I shouldn't say that, maybe some of you, but most people detest this experience. It is awful. It goes on forever. There's gamesmanship. But now things are changing, and they're changing in front of our eyes. Why are they changing? Because there's this digitalization happening. You, the consumer, have massive amounts of new power, okay? You can buy a car direct now from a little startup called Tesla. We've all heard about how they've revolutionized Tesla's revolutionized the experience in so many different ways. There's Lucid Air. People are buying Lucids now. There's Rivians you can buy direct. There's a company called VinFast from Vietnam that's entering our market that is going to go direct. There's Lordstown. I mean, there's a lot of new startups that are going direct to customer, and we think that's going to happen more and more. The other thing happening on the digital front, for those of you, any of you have a Tesla, what's so cool about your Tesla? Many things are cool about your Tesla, but one of them is it gets better and smarter all the time. You get over-the-air updates, okay? You get full self-driving. You get all these new applications. And people are going, this is a massive new market. This is a massive market. Now, the auto industry, legacy players haven't stood idly by. They realize this, and they're going to try to get and monetize this industry. And they want to monetize as much as they can with the data that they can have. We see this literally as a $5 to $8 trillion industry going forward. It is massive, okay? Think about what could be on your car and what will be on your car. You're driving along, you're going to get advanced analytics on maintenance. The cars all have chipsets on it. It will be able to predict relatively well when a certain part will be out and need maintenance in advance. It can even probably book you into getting you maintenance set up at the dealership or wherever you want to go. You're going to have EV charging stations where you can go and where you can pay. You'll have automatic payments. There's a plethora of different types of services. The huge area we're seeing big traction now is in insurance. Tesla is pioneering this. They're now in 12 states, but think about this for a moment. Okay, Elon says that they're going to probably get as much for insurance as they do for vehicle sales. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's going to be massive. They're in 12 states. Think about what the auto industry did before. They pretty much gave all this away. There's an insurance industry, right? Think about that they get all this. There's the aftermarket industry that they gave away. The gasoline and, the charging, somebody else does all that. Well, the auto industry wants a piece of the pie now. So this is very exciting for the industry. And we feel very good that through subscription models that people will buy their car and be willing to pay additional subscriptions. And this is if you were writing down a note, those companies that can actually figure this out and get paid, like you pay Netflix every month or like you pay Hulu or Apple, whatever, TV, will fundamentally change their profitability equation versus only getting a car, one and done, see you later, and that's it, and sell you some, aftermarket parts. This is a huge, huge opportunity for the industry. The only problem I would say, I'm an optimist, and very much so, but as you will see, I want to be a realist. If you were to add up what all the automakers say in this area, we basically have you know, 12 automakers think they're going to have $30 to $50 billion businesses. Just to put that in perspective, SAP, one of the world's largest software companies, I think is around $30 billion. So I have my doubts that all this is going to happen the way the auto industry thinks, but mark my words, this is a great opportunity for the industry, and it's a great opportunity if they can get the software and the electronics to come together to sell these bundled services. It could be exciting. And again, winners here can make a fortune. Those who are late, those who are behind, Volkswagen, and Audi were late on a recent software update. The CEO, arguably of VW, Herbert Diess, was fired over this. I mean, this is not for the faint-hearted. These skill sets of software and electronics that go in these vehicles are not germane to the auto industry, and getting that talent to be able to do that. But it is a very, very exciting industry, very exciting part of the industry. Next slide. The other thing going on at the same time is the dealer network is changing. As I told you, you can buy direct now. On the other end of the spectrum, people forget about this, but these large dealerships are changing too. The large dealerships from, the Auto Nations, the Sonics, etc., they're buying up a lot of these smaller dealerships, okay? And if they get as big as many of them might be, and they're starting to get, think of them as Walmart and Amazon. So if you're an automaker, like today, if you want to sell your product on Amazon, think about how powerful Amazon Purchasing Group is before you're allowed to get on there. If you want to sell to Walmart, think about what prices Walmart is able to extract from you as a producer to sell in a Walmart store online. Okay, now let's keep that same analogy for a second. Now say you're AutoNation and you've got 20-25% of the market or more. What would happen if they said, we only want one, truck on or two, and we're going to pick the F-150 and maybe we'll do the Silverado, but that's all we want to take. Think about the power they could have if they were able to control that much of the distribution, okay? So this is happening in front of our eyes. On the flip side of it, you're having other people in the industry going direct to consumer and avoiding the hell of going to the dealership, okay? We've never seen anything like this. This is very cool and exciting. In between what you're happening is bifurcation of other areas where you have hybrid models where the automakers are working with their dealer network, which gives them a great opportunity to work together. Recently, Ford Motor Company announced to their 3,000 dealers they wanted them to invest in EV charging stations. Very, very expensive. It costs over $1.5 million to put a high-speed charging station or more. I mean, these are massive investments for dealerships, and a big portion of them accepted. But I think there were probably 700 who didn't for whatever reason. So you're having, and each one of the OEMs are going to their dealers trying to figure out how all this is going to play out. So this is exciting, but trust me, the digitalization of the retail side is going to be something to watch. Last comment there, and I don't have a slide on it, but I do want to spend a moment and talk about autonomy. But last slide, or next slide, please. The other area that is advanced is around the used car area. Now, Carvana, which was this upstart buy your car online, you have Vroom, you have others, basically have entered this market. They got leverage and try to buy people out. We shall see. This is one of the early perhaps carnages that I talked to you about before, about the many roads, the equilibrium here. This one might be one that may be in big trouble. We shall see. But there are others out there online. The used car market, in terms of its transparency, in terms of its pricing, about your experience in buying and selling a car which is used, is undergoing tremendous change. So all areas I'll call about in automotive retail and the digitalization are also going through this transformation. Last year, and I don't have a slide on it, and I apologize, but I'm going to, I want to talk you through my fourth area because I think it's important. And this is around autonomous vehicles, and then I'll open it up for questions. This was in the early part of last decade, the 2013, 14, and 15. There was this little upstart company called Google. They created what was called the Google car. It is morphed into, and some of the founders of this, into a company called Waymo. Write this down, Waymo. I have a winter home in Arizona and the Phoenix Land area. And since the last 20 months, for those who've been to the Phoenix Land area, you'll know this, you can order, and is one of the damn coolest things in the world, a self-driving car with no driver. Let me repeat, a self-driving car with no driver. You push a button just like you would push a button to get an Uber, and it will pick you up and drop you off. It is friggin' awesome and amazing, okay? It's in the area of the Phoenix Land area. They've now expanded downtown. Eventually, they're going to go to the airport. It's very expensive technology. It takes to scale it. I'm not going to get into the details of that. We can ask questions, but they are there today. They are now, for those of you who've been to the Bay Area, they have the Jaguar I-Pace in downtown San Francisco. You were able to get rides there. You just push a button, and a self-driving car will take you. Pretty amazing. And they've announced they're going to be, in 2023, they've announced they're going to be in 2 other cities and maybe even more, okay? That company is called Waymo. You probably never heard of them. There's another company called Cruise Automation. Cruise is a startup, and back in 2015, this little company called General Motors bought them out, close to $1 billion. I think it was $800 million, and have scaled this up. And the guy that runs it, Kyle Vogt, who's a friend of mine, who's really amazing guy, has embarked, and the GM has been all in on this. If you ever listen to a General Motors, you're bored and listen to earnings announcements, which I love to do every quarter, Kyle Vogt is on every earnings call with Mary Barra, the CEO and CFO. It's that important to their business model. They are live today in San Francisco. You can order in limited availability, and I just talked to one of the executives there. I'm going to actually get access to the app, which I'm very happy about. You can take a ride in San Francisco, self-driving car, no driver in there, okay? In San Francisco, Cruise Automation. They've announced they're going to Phoenix, and they're going to be in Austin, Texas. They're already starting to deploy, and they will be there in 2023, and they have big plans to go out in different places throughout the country, little by little by little, okay? By 20, there's, I'm going to give you one other company I want you to pay attention to, and then I'm going to talk about the shakeout. There's another company you've probably never heard of called Mobileye. Okay, write down Mobileye, for those of you who've heard of it. It was a tiny little Israeli startup. Professor Shashua, who founded the company, is a professor in robotics and AI, both at Technion in Israel and at MIT. And in Israel, because they live in a very bad neighborhood. As you know, they had some issues with their neighbors sending missiles in, and over the years, through partnership with the United States, they developed the Iron Dome, which is the technology to shoot down missiles that come into Israel. We're actually Patriot missiles before, we're actually thinking about deploying those in Ukraine now. Well, that technology, which was developed both in Israel and the United States, basically takes laser technology that can see an incoming missile, and in a nanosecond shoot it down or not, or let it go and drop in the Negev desert and not worry about it, okay, because it won't do any damage. They came up with this concept, which was absolutely genius. They said, well, hell, if we can shoot down a rocket, what if we could use that same technology and put it on a car? And if a car could see, we could stop and save people's lives, right? And they embarked on this. Today, they were ignored and laughed at, by the way, just so you know. The auto industry just couldn't understand what they were doing and why this would ever be important. This little company called Mercedes-Benz realized, like, oh my God, if our camera could be on our car, it would stop and save lives. And you probably saw all those great advertisements back in the day with this. And then once Mercedes put it on their car, this little company called Audi did. And then, of course, this little company called BMW didn't want to be left. And today they're on 25, if not all 20, out of 27 OEMs. And this is called ADAS. This is Advanced Driver Safety Systems. And their computer chip, it's a computer chip and a camera, basically. And they're on their I think they're on their IQ 7 or 6. They went public. It was the largest public IPO ever in Israel history. And then all of a sudden, this little company, you might have heard of them, they're called Intel Corporation, bought them out for $15.3 billion. They just did a split from Intel and did another IPO. And why am I telling you all this about this little tiny Israeli startup? They are a global powerhouse, not only in ADAS, but also in self-driving. Their self-driving technology is global. They have pilots live in Tokyo, throughout Germany, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem. I'm missing, they're in 5 countries. They're going to go into New York City. They are the third powerhouse, I would tell you, that you should watch for, okay? Mobileye. Now, there's also been carnage. There's a lot of these companies. Ford Motor Company and Volkswagen partnered with a company called Argo AI, a really fantastic company, but it's going to take billions of dollars to bring this to market, and they decided they didn't want to spend all the billions, and it's too far out, so they basically restructured, and that company is now out of business, okay? There's other ones called Motional. That's with Hyundai and Aptiv. They're investing more and more. They're out there. There's Toyota. Toyota bought Uber's old self-driving car group. It's called Woven Planet. They're spending billions of dollars, okay? I'm missing some, but I hope you get the gist of it. There's a lot of AV players out there. And my question to you is, like, how many apps do you have on your phone to get a ride share? You probably have Uber and you probably have Lyft, but other than that, you're going to really download 3 or 4 or 5 of these things to get ride hailing? I don't know. So first mover advantage matters, and this is an area you should look at. The last point on AVs is it's not just ride hailing, it's also trucks. You're seeing Class 8 trucks go self-driving. There's a massive market opportunity in this area. There's a truck shortage. It's a very difficult lifestyle. There's drug abuse, there's accidents, and this is fantastic technology. There is a company a guy you might have heard of. His name is Warren Buffett, and Berkshire Hathaway recently announced a strategic investment in a AV startup called Kodiak. It is a self-driving truck company, it's pretty amazing that they're in this area. There's companies called Aurora that has self-driving trucks. It's fantastic. Chris Urmson is from the Google Car Group. And there's 3 or 4 others, too simple. I don't want to give you all the names, but essentially to say there's the fourth area, there are massive changes going on there. So with the last pause, and I'll take questions, I'll summarize. The industry is going through a transformation we've never seen in the last 100 years. We are in disequilibrium. Used car prices, new car prices are completely out of whack right now, okay? There is $500 billion of committed capital that has been committed. These boards they've gone to the boards and said they're going to make all this great money. It's all positioned at the highest end of the market, okay? At the same time, 43 million Americans have moved. Where they drive, how far they drive is completely changing, right? We have a third revolution going on in terms of the digitalization of the industry, and we have a fourth one going on with the autonomous vehicles, all happening at the same time. It's a fantastic time to be in automotive. It's going to be rainbows and butterflies and fantastic for most companies, but trust me, not for all. There's going to be a shakeout. With that, let me pause and take your questions.
All right, Gary, we don't have any questions in the chat, but let's open it up to the audience and see if they have any questions. I personally am excited for the autonomous taxis to make it to Chicago to help me cart around my 3 daughters back and forth to gymnastics. So I look forward to that, and the presentation was great. But let's open it up for any questions for those online.
Well, I guess maybe to that, I mean, on the autonomous driving, Gary, when you talk about it, it's in cities with warm weather. I mean, how long do you think it will be before we see autonomous vehicles in a place like Chicago, where lots of weather? Chicago's pretty much on a grid, but lots of traffic. When do you think we're going to see it in cities like that, where it's not sunshine and dry weather, like in the desert, like Phoenix?
Great question, Mary Beth. I think what you'll have is they'll deploy slower in those areas for sure. But They will be there eventually. I don't think they'll go there first. They want to prove out the business model and make money, but they will come to Chicago. If you go back to the map I showed you, where and how people drive, where you have high concentration in small areas like that, it is ripe for ride-hailing. It's ripe for those type of trips. And I think they will come there just because the economics make sense, but not first. You're spot on, because why go there when you can prove it out in these other cities and get people hooked before?
Right.
But that's a great question. Great question.
Okay. We've got a couple
Others,
minutes.
It can't be such, it's a shy crowd. Come on, ask questions. I like questions.
I know, right after lunch, right? It's a hard, well, at least on the us in the Eastern time zone. Well, Gary,
Go ahead,
Brad. No, go ahead.
Please. I was going to say, I know we have 2 minutes left. Maybe just question is, now that we've seen the EV cars out in the marketplace for a while, any impact on the long-term used car values for those cars, just with the battery replacements and such? Are you seeing any sort of trends as the batteries, I don't know what the ranges are, maybe 100 to 200,000 miles, and a pretty significant cost to replace them? Anything you're seeing in that front?
Oh, that's a multi-billion-dollar question. Whoever asked that. The answer is we shall see on this front. So the issue, as you know, and people have different business models. Like VinFast, for example, is going to own the battery, and you just buy the vehicle, and they'll replace your battery. It's not even separate. So you're seeing different business models on that. Others, the technology is changing so quickly. I don't know if you saw just even yesterday, the day before, there's a new silicon carbide. They're going to have a different derivative, and Microsoft is investing in it. I mean, and I was I had the honor and pleasure to get invited to a private tour at Argonne National Labs, one of our crown jewels of the national labs, and the advanced research that they're doing on batteries. I mean, you could have a wholesale change in technology in the next years, and if you had old technology, I don't know what your car is going to be worth. So great question, and it's something to watch, something very
That's your next
important to watch. There you go.
All right, well, I know we're at the top of the hour here, but Gary, just wanted to thank you very much for joining us today, and of course our clients that were able to dial in and listen. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. The papers are available, and happy to set up any further conversations on this topic.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Thank you.